Hey, this is Randall Foster from Symphonic Distribution. You are listening to Your Morning Coffee, the podcast with my friends Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart. Weekly music news for the new music business.
From Murray Stassen at Music Business Worldwide, the music industry is closing in on 1 billion global subscribers, with Spotify out in front.
From Ted Johnson over at Deadline, the No Fakes Act, bill meant to curb unauthorized digital replicas, clears Senate Judiciary Committee.
From Mark Lemuel M., this is from LinkedIn, Warner and UMG are quietly asking artists for their stems.
And from Mandy DeLogdug over at Music Business Worldwide, 4 music data sets holding millions of tracks are being shared among AI developers. Well, we have got so much to talk about. Jay and I, in fact, are quite glad you're here. So we're going to start the show right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. 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 Standing by. Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Jay, it is so good to see you. We've been chatting for a bit. I just told you need to see the Earth, Wind, and Fire documentary that Questlove did that's on HBO. It is fantastic.
Wait. Yeah, we're always on the lookout for any new documentaries or, books on artists. So if any of our listeners see a good documentary or hear about a good book coming out, please let us know. Yeah, we just dropped a special bonus episode of the Your Morning Coffee podcast, and it was recorded live at A2IM's Indie Week in New York last week. And it was a couple of conversations, one with Mark Jowett from Network and the other with Zena White from Partisan.
Yeah, it was really a good one. Mark is a co-founder of Network Music Group with Terry McBride, one of the most enduring independent labels in North America. Few people in this industry have navigated the shift from physical to digital to streaming across 4 decades the way Mark Jowett has.
Yeah, and Zena is the president of Partisan Records, one of the most respected indie labels in the business. They just won a Liberia Award for Label of the Year. We sit down and we discuss what it means to be independent today. So that's one episode that just dropped. Next week, this coming week, we're going to drop the second of these 2 A2IM Indie Week episodes. And this one has 3 interviews all in one. It's Molly Newman from CD Baby, Ali Galani from Bandcamp, Sean Johnson from Empire's Top Drawer Merch. Super great conversations. Don't miss that bonus episode dropping in a couple of days.
And by the way, when I was listening to the one that's already dropped, it was cute because you told me the story. Zena had forgotten. I think she mentions it in the interview that she had forgotten that it was that day, and and you started with Mark, and then Zena jumps in. So it was
the show must go on, right?
The show must go on, indeed. Well, before we jump into our big stories this week, an interesting piece from Chris Eggerston over at Billboard: the Rocky Horror Picture Show coming to Las Vegas's Sphere. So the Sphere Entertainment announced that the Rocky Horror Picture Show will come to Las Vegas Sphere in 2027 via a deal with Primary Wave Music and 20th Century Studios. The 1975 cult classic will be enhanced using Sphere's advanced technologies for the venue's 160,000 square foot curved screen.
Yeah, wow. I've been there. It's fantastic. I can't wait to go back, and I can't wait to see this. they're using AI to sort of enhance these films. They're following the same playbook that they did with The Wizard of Oz. They'll also use AI to expand visuals, to fit that curved screen that you mentioned, and to restore footage in ultra high definition and add character composites to scenes where they were originally maybe absent.
Yeah, and it makes sense because there is a proven model behind it. The Wizard of Oz at Sphere generated over $400 million in ticket sales and 3 million tickets sold since its August of 2025 debut, making Rocky Horror a logical next bet with its built-in cult audience and participation culture.
I can't wait.
That is an understatement for sure. Hey, before we get going, we got to thank our sponsor. Support for the show comes from Cosign. That is Cosign with a K. Cosign is a reimagined publishing administration platform launched by independent music publisher Cobalt.
Yeah, it's designed by artists, producers, and songwriters that allows creators to collect global publishing royalties with simple, transparent terms and no long contracts.
In its first year of operation, Cosign was named one of the 10 most innovative music companies by Fast Company. You can find out why at Cosign Music. Again, that's Cosign with a K, music.com. Awesome. Love it. By the way, every week I get to hang out with my longtime friend Jay Gilbert, music business consultant, educator, curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter, and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music Groups.
Yeah, and every week I get to do this show with my good friend Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Group, and we pop on every morning and talk about music and life and books and stuff for a while before we even hit record, and it's a fun part of every weekend for me.
And mine as well.
All right, well, let's jump into the big stories this week. The first one is from Murray Stassen over at Music Business Worldwide. The music industry is closing in on 1 billion global subscribers. Wow. With Spotify out in front.
Yeah, that is billion with a B. Global music streaming subscriptions reached 921.6 million at the end of 2025. That's up a little over 10% year over year and nearly double the 472.2 million counted back in 2020.
Yeah, incredible growth. That 1 billion milestone is now imminent. Spotify leads with just over 31% market share. That's about 290 million subscribers. When YouTube Music is the fastest growing platform for the second consecutive year.
Right. Things to think about. The industry added roughly 84 million net subscribers in 2025, though growth is decelerating. Major label streaming revenue rose 8.3%, slightly lagging subscriber growth, but the gap is actually narrowing.
Yeah, so here are the rankings, and this is from Media Research, the end of 2025. Spotify, just over 31%. Tencent Music, almost 14%. Then Apple Music at number 3 at about 13%. Then YouTube Music, just over 12%, and followed by Amazon Music at 8.5%.
Right. But YouTube Music is really the story to watch. It was the fastest growing DSP in percentage terms and is on track to surpass both Apple Music and Tencent in 2026. It already overtook Spotify as the number 1 service in Middle East and North Africa. Asia Pacific and Latin America have been its growth engines as well.
Yeah, Apple Music is losing a little ground. Its share dropped from 18.4% in 2020 when it was number 2 to about 12.6% today. Amazon Music and Tencent also lost a little bit of global share.
Yeah, so Latin America, Asia Pacific, and rest of the world have driven over 70% of global growth for 5 straight years. Latin America hit a record for net additions in 2025, although Asia Pacific growth is slowing a bit.
Right. And Tencent, despite losing subscriber share, Tencent grew revenue by almost 16%, driven by its premium super VIP tier that we talk about. And that surged from 10 million subscribers to 20 million in roughly 1 year.
Wow. It's hard to believe, though, we're talking about 1 billion subscribers.
Yeah. I remember when that was just a few 100 million and thinking that was a lot of people. But yeah, absolutely. We're closing in fast.
Well, here we are indeed. Our next story is from Ted Johnson over at Deadline. The No Fakes Act, bill meant to curb unauthorized digital replicas, clears Senate Judiciary Committee. So the No Fakes Act, federal legislation designed to protect individuals from unauthorized AI-generated digital replicas of their voice and likeness, passed the Senate Judiciary Committee unanimously by voice vote on June 18th.
Yeah, and you and I talked about this recently. It was really surprising to a lot of people that there's no national law up until this passed. There was no national law protecting your name and likeness. There were some state level laws, but no, it's like a patchwork. So in a significant step forward for the entertainment industry, which has lobbied hard for this protection, a companion bill exists in the House. And the Trump administration has signaled support. The path to a full Senate floor vote remains uncertain.
Well, here's what you need to know. The bill gives every individual the right to authorize use of their voice and likeness in AI-generated digital replicas. That right survives death and can be inherited or licensed by heirs for up to 70 years post-mortem.
Yeah, there's some carve-outs, things like news, documentary, sports, biographical works, parody, criticism, and commentary. Those things are exempt, as is content depicting individuals in a historical or biographical manner, including some degree of fictionalization, for example, Forrest Gump-style depictions.
There is a broad coalition supported by entertainment guilds, studios, record labels, and notably tech companies OpenAI and Google YouTube. The RIAA, MPA, and Human Artistry Campaign all praised the vote.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of First Amendment friction here. Senators like Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, Eric Schmidt, they voted yes, but raised concerns about protecting satire and political speech. Ted Cruz specifically cited AI-generated political ads as content that should remain protected. Interesting.
Yeah, but what's next? A little bit of uncertainty. When the bill was first introduced in 2024, it died in committee. It's now cleared that hurdle, but floor scheduling and final passage remain open questions.
There's a music industry angle here, Mike. Voiceover artists and NAVA have been among the most vocal advocates, framing this as, a livelihood issue. AI replicas of their voices directly undercut their work. Makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah, exactly. Our next story is a really interesting one that you and I have been chatting about this morning already. It's from Mark Lemuel M. via LinkedIn. Warner and UMG are quietly asking artists for their stems. So Warner Music Group and Universal Music Group are reportedly approaching legacy artists with requests to hand over isolated stems. We're talking drums, vocals, bass, etc., from their master recordings, not for sample packs or demos, but explicitly for AI model training. Ooh.
Yeah, so what's their pitch? Well, clean stems produce dramatically better AI output. The catch? No defined compensation at this point, no percentage, no timeline. Artists who decline, they're told that they'll be left out of whatever the emerging AI music ecosystem becomes. Though what that means is deliberately left vague. The proposed payment structure mirrors Spotify's pool model, and that's a fixed pot divided by the number of participants and usage, diluting as more artists join, the same fractional penny math that has frustrated artists for decades.
Right. Well, here's what you need to know. The most incisive comment frames this as a legal pivot. Labels couldn't beat AI companies in court fast enough, so they switched strategies. Now they want to own the clean licensed training data going forward. The left out threat likely means future AI models will be trained exclusively on label approved catalogs. So artists who opt out lose stylistic influence over how music evolves algorithmically for the next generation.
Yeah, the dynamic is a studied repeat, right? Labels sued AI companies for training on artists' work without permission. They won public sympathy, they cut deals, and they're now using that same leverage to extract artist catalogs with no guaranteed return at this point.
A commentator also raised a legitimate factual wrinkle. Legacy artists on older direct signing deals typically don't hold their stems. The label does. And isolated stems weren't standard practice until the early 2000s, raising questions about what catalog is actually being targeted here.
Yeah, and so everybody's on the same page. Stems and multitracks are sort of, people use them interchangeably at times, but a stem is really a group of multitracks. Like, for example, all of the drums and cymbals, maybe one stem, a horn section with multiple horns, maybe one stem. And so these stems are things that the AI trains on for their models, right? So these comments, there's an undercurrent. Many in the industry see open source AI tools as the eventual escape hatch, letting artists train models on their own catalogs and bypass labels entirely. So more to come, but that was a really super interesting piece.
Yeah, and that actually leads into the next piece, which is also super interesting. It's from Mandy DeLugda over at Music Business Worldwide. 4 music data sets holding millions of tracks are being shared among AI developers, The Atlantic reports. So 4 music data sets containing over 21 million recordings, including copyrighted tracks from major artists like Taylor Swift, the Beatles, and Billie Eilish, are being circulated among AI developers, according to investigative reporting by The Atlantic.
Wow. This data set ranges from around 100,000 to 12 million tracks and have each been downloaded thousands of times, though which AI companies have used which data sets is largely opaque. The disclosure lands amid a wave of litigation between the music industry and AI music generators, with the industry now splitting between majors who've moved toward licensing deals and those still fighting in court.
Yeah, wow. So here's what you need to know. The data sets, 2 are well documented. Lion Disco 12M, Lion, by the way, is spelled Laion, with 12 million tracks, and the Free Music Archive with about 100,000 tracks, but neither was created for commercial AI training. Lion explicitly warns against commercial use. Google and Stability AI are confirmed users of the Free Music Archive.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the legal landscape. Suno and Udio collectively face at least 12 lawsuits. The RIAA sued both in 2024, that was back in June, and on behalf of UMG, Sony, and Warner. Since then, UMG and Warner have pivoted to settlements and licensing deals, while Sony remains in active litigation against both companies. International rights bodies GEMA and CODA are also suing Suno.
Right. There is a licensing shift. Warner's deal with Suno is notable. Suno acquired Songkick as part of it and committed to launching new licensed models in 2026, deprecating its current ones. UMG's Udio deal moves the service into a walled garden with fingerprinting and filtering. Udio has also signed deals with Merlin and Cobalt.
Right. So is there some financial harm here? CSAC commissioned research estimates generative AI could cannibalize 24% of music creators' revenues by 2028, a cumulative 10 billion euros lost between 2023 and 2028. At the individual level, indie duo The American Dollar claims Suno reduced their licensing revenue by nearly 80%.
Right. Ugh. Well, this article talks about a platform flood. Deezer was receiving 75,000 AI-generated tracks per day as of April of this year, 44% of all new uploads. That's up from just 10,000 a day back in early 2025. Consumption remains low, only about 1 to 3% of streams, with 85%, that's 85% flagged as fraudulent. Spotify, Apple Music, and Qobuz have all introduced AI tagging measures in response.
Yeah, and that's a key point, Mike, that, there's a lot of this crap being uploaded, but they're estimating 1 to 3% of streams. People are not gravitating towards AI-generated music at this point. So let's look at the broader picture. The music industry is rapidly bifurcating between a licensing-based accommodation with AI companies and ongoing litigation. So while the independent artist community really remains largely uncompensated and underrepresented in both tracks.
Yeah, boy, really interesting stuff. Well, we got one last story here, our final story of the week. It's from Jim Oswald over at Variety. Grammy Awards announce big changes to Best New Artist and Album rules and add 5 new categories. So the Recording Academy has announced significant rule changes and 5 new categories for the 69th Grammy Awards. That happens February 7th of 2027, reflecting shifts in how artists develop and how the music industry defines albums and genres.
Yeah, I think this is all really great news, Mike. And here's what you need to know. The best new artist rule change, let's start with that. The maximum number of times an artist can be submitted increases from 3 to 4. The rationale, artist development takes longer today, and many artists release substantial catalogs before breaking through. Ella Langley is, that's one beneficiary, previously submitted 3 times. She now gets a 4th shot following the success of Choosing Texas and Dandelion.
Yeah, well, and album eligibility has been loosened. The threshold of new recordings required on an eligible album drops from 75% to 66%, addressing cases where albums heavy on remixes or live tracks were being excluded despite being widely considered new releases.
Right. And songwriter recognition has been expanded, and I think this is super important. Songwriters and composers on winning genre albums will now receive Grammy statuettes and achievement certificates, bringing them in line with producers and engineers.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the 5 new categories added. The first one, Best Asian Pop Music Performance, think K-pop, J-pop, C-pop, etc. And Best R&B Collaboration or Duo Group Performance. That's splitting off from the renamed Best R&B Solo Performance.
Right, and the other 3, Best Traditional Pop Vocal Performance, right? Best Traditional Folk Album, that existing Best Folk Album renamed Best Contemporary Folk Album, and then Best Latin Song, and that's songwriter focused and Spanish language.
Yeah. There is a voting update. A new opt-in Ballot Plus system lets members with multi-genre expertise vote in up to 15 categories instead of the standard 10-3 structure, subject to credential verification.
Yeah, and finally, digital eligibility. Internet-only releases are now eligible for Best Album Notes and Best Historical Album if supplementary materials are included with the commercial download.
Yeah, the overarching theme of all of this is modernization. The Academy is acknowledging that streaming-era artist development, album formats, and global music markets don't map cleanly onto rules written for an earlier era. Well, good for them. That is actually pretty cool. Hey, it's time to wrap up the show. We do want to thank our sponsor. Big thanks to Cosign. That again is Cosign with a K. To advertise in the podcast and newsletter, do visit yourmorning.coffee for more information. The music is by our friends, the Licorice Quartet. And if you like the show, boy, Jay and I would certainly appreciate if you just tell one friend. So, on behalf of my good friend Jay Gilbert, I'm Mike Etchart. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.